Marvel Rivals loves using the year 2099, so that got me curious. How many characters in the game have actually appeared in the 2099 comics? From copycats to clones, there's even a few that simply survived that long. I read the first comic appearance of every Rivals character's 2099 variant. We kick it off with easily the most popular character in Spider-Man 2099 #1. Miguel O'Hara is a top scientist at Alchemax, but he doesn't agree with the human experiments they've been doing. So his boss, Tyler Stone, does the logical thing of altering Miguel's DNA to become addicted to a drug that he can only get from Alchemax, so now he can't quit. Miguel is a little pissed off by this and rushes home, where he accidentally beats the shit out of his girlfriend, immediately realizing he can't live with these drugs in his system. Though luckily, Miguel was the one running the DNA altering program, so they have a copy of his DNA from before the addiction. Unfortunately, one of his coworkers is jealous of his success and tries to kill Miguel by adding a second set of DNA into the machine, that of a long-dead superhero, turning Miguel into Spider-Man 2099. The comic ending with him lunging at his coworker, fangs out. We get our next character just a few months later in Punisher 2099 #1. Jake Gallows is a happy man. He's a devoted member of the Church of Thor, he's a high-ranking cop, and his family has just been gunned down in broad daylight. The guy even got away with it since he's a black card holder. An elite group of the richest people in 2099 who are basically allowed to do whatever they want. The whole police system is actually money-based. Cops straight up won't protect you if you don't pay your monthly fees, which Jake has decided he's sick of. Perfectly in time for him to discover Frank Castle's secret stash, containing a bunch of gear along with a notebook asking Jake to continue his legacy. The comic ends with him donning the Punisher 2099 suit, which contains Jake's new technology like a camera blocker, along with Frank's old technology, like the last revolver to ever be made. Our third character shows up early the next year in 2099 Unlimited #1. John Eisenhart is a Hollywood lawyer, his main job being to secure the rights for movies, and he's just struck gold, discovering a small cult out in the desert named the Knights of Banner. He tries to convince them that a movie about the group could be awesome, but they reject him. So he tricks one of their youngest members into divulging all their darkest secrets. Like the fact they aren't named after a physical banner, they're named after Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. And their leader has been trying to recreate the experiment that originally created him, which ends up being exactly the info John needs to call the cops on the Knights, attempting to leverage their freedom for the movie rights. Unfortunately, the kid is pissed that John betrayed his trust, running into a secret lab and setting off the device their leader has been working on, immediately blowing up every knight and cop in the area, except John, who's transformed into Hulk 2099. But he's got a lot more control over his rage than Banner did. He swears to take down any corrupt media corporations, as the comic ends with him saving a famous singer who's being hunted by her own record label because she spoke out against the fact they were sneaking subliminal messages into her music. We kick off 2099's first major crossover event in Ravage 2099 #14. Paul Ravage, a CEO who got mutated after being exiled to the radioactive Hell Rock Island, is currently in a fight with Punisher 2099, but they're both stronger than the other was expecting, and a bunch of guards come rushing in before one of them can win. Ravage diving out a window, revealing the fight was taking place in Valhalla, a flying city created by Alchemax for the Church of Thor. Something's gone wrong though, and the city has started drifting, heading straight towards Nueva York, which is a big enough deal that Dr. Doom comes to ask for Ravage's help. Well, I doubt he actually cares about Nueva York, he just doesn't want Valhalla floating over to Latveria afterwards. Though the city itself is the least of their problems, as the comic ends with Ravage's former assistant, Tiana, being brainwashed into believing she's the reincarnation of Hela, the Asgardian goddess of death. Little bit of lore, in 2099 all the Asgardian gods have gone missing. It's never directly mentioned what happened to them, but an upcoming comic does slightly hint at it. Continuing that same storyline, we get Spider-Man 2099 #16. The flying city of Valhalla has just appeared over Nueva York. Thor 2099 stepping out and announcing he's taking over the city, so everyone has to leave, except Miguel O'Hara's girlfriend, cause he thinks she's hot. Miguel tries to stop Thor, but gets launched through a building, taking the opportunity to put on his Spidey outfit so he can sneak into Valhalla, though he's caught pretty quickly and ends up in a fight with Heimdall 2099, beating him before taking his sword and challenging Thor, actually managing to get a few good hits in, even drawing blood. But Thor gets sick of the battle and launches Miguel out the window with his hammer. It's definitely not the real Mjolnir though, as Spider-Man is able to just push it away, and Miguel O'Hara couldn't possibly be worthy, right? The comic ends with him landing in some rubble trouble and being discovered by Punisher 2099. Still in that same crossover event, we get X-Men 2099 number 5, kicking it off in the middle of a full-blown war between the Church of Thor and basically every 2099 hero. They're all separated though, so most of them are getting their asses handed to them by the false gods. The X-Men's speedster Mean Streak is even knocked unconscious, eventually waking up in front of a wolf that suddenly shapeshifts into Loki 2099, who, just like the real Loki, is playing both sides of the conflict, revealing that he's actually Mean Streak's old friend, Boone, and he's managed to resist the Church's brainwashing, giving him a device that can disrupt Heimdall's infinite sight, causing him to go blind, which makes the fight way easier. Though the comic ends with Thor 2099 crashing into the city, declaring there will be no more mercy. We don't get our next character until nearly 2 years later, in Spider-Man 2099 number 32. Miguel O'Hara is attending the Day of the Dead festival, which, fun fact, is actually where he originally got his Spider-Man outfit. Unfortunately, not everyone is in a partying mood, as Nando Morguez has tracked down an ancient amulet so he can perform a ritual to revive his sister, which ends up working. Well, not quite. It revives every dead body in the city except his sister. Zombies start to roam the streets, but luckily someone new is headed to town. Strange 2099, who flies down to ask for Spider-Man's help to save the city, though he doesn't quite trust her, so she jokes about how the other guy's doctor title probably helped a lot with introductions as the comic ends. Speaking of doctors, it's Doom 2099 number 33. America is officially a perfect nation, as Doom has become the president, though his happiness doesn't last long, as the comic starts by revealing Captain America is back. The corporation Alchemax, having discovered his frozen body, immediately going onto the news and claiming that the reason all of Earth's heroes died 100 years ago was because of Doom, which he instantly calls out as a lie, declaring this Cap an imposter. He doesn't get the chance to tell the world though, as his floating headquarters suddenly explodes above the White House. The comic quickly cutting to John Herod, the man responsible, who's discovered a giant stash of tech that the world government deemed too unsafe for humans, like helicopters that are grown out of people. It's also implied that he's responsible for Captain America coming back. The comic ends with the mancopters flying to Latveria and dumping necrotoxins on its population, melting them all, as Doom can't do anything but watch. Releasing the same month is Spider-Man 2099 number 35. Alchemax's CEO, Tyler Stone, has just barely survived an assassination attempt, so Dr. Doom has offered his job to Miguel O'Hara, though we quickly cut away to focus on some C-tier villains, Blood Mace and Toad, as a weird black goop starts crawling out of the sewers. They try to fight it, but it completely melts Blood Mace, before revealing itself to be Venom 2099. He wants revenge against Tyler for some reason, so he breaks into the hospital and tries to finish him off, though Miguel quickly dons his Spidey outfit, and the comic ends with Venom mentioning this isn't the first spider he's fought, implying that this isn't some new symbiote. This is modern day Venom who's just been living in the sewers for 100 years. You might have noticed I haven't actually mentioned Venom's host, because they aren't shown in this comic, but it is eventually revealed to be Kron Stone, the guy who killed Punisher 2099's family. We get a whole new series with Fantastic Four 2099 number 1. Johnny, Reed, Ben, and Sue have just mysteriously woken up in the negative zone, wearing completely new outfits they can't remember getting. Before they can question it though, they're immediately attacked by a bunch of bugs, saving a woman named Chimera before finding the portal back to the Baxter Building. Well, at least it used to go to the Baxter Building, until decades passed and it was bought by S.H.I.E.L.D. The 5 of them suddenly appearing in the year 2099, though they don't get a warm welcome, as every agent in the building immediately tries to capture them, calling them experiments gone rogue. Luckily, a lot of the Fantastic Four's old junk is still in the building, so they grab the Fantasticar and fly to safety. Well, by safety, I really just mean 3 streets away, before they're suddenly blown out of the sky and end up all separated. Ben and Reed hiding in an abandoned building, Sue being discovered by a very creepy dude, and the comic actually ends before we see what happened to Johnny and Chimera. An upcoming comic will explain more about this 4, but we gotta take a pit stop into Spider-Man 2099 number 43. Alchemax has created an underwater city called New Atlantis, though it was built by a bunch of genetically altered subaquatic slaves, which aren't too happy with their situation, so they stage a revolution and take back the city, led by a man inspired by the stories of Namor, deciding to just steal his name and reverse it, becoming Roman the Submariner, aka Namor 2099. One Alchemax worker barely makes it out alive, being saved by Spider-Man, who's also currently the CEO of Alchemax. The worker asking him if he's gonna allow the subaquatic people to keep the city. Miguel responding, I don't know yet, the board members probably won't like it, which the employee immediately takes as a firm no, removing his shirt to reveal he's actually a New Atlantean, diving into the ocean and telling Romaine to declare war on the surface world. The comic ends with a giant wave hitting Nueva York, while Spider-Man starts to freak the fuck out at Roman, asking why he couldn't have just waited a little while longer for a real answer. We get the biggest comic in the video in 2099, Manifest Destiny. Earth is doing really badly. Humans have destroyed most of the stuff on the planet, and no one can get off the planet because the Watchers decided humans were too dangerous for the universe. So they put a giant unbreakable bubble around Earth. Though the real reason is just that the 2099 writers didn't want to deal with space stories. Luckily, the moon is also in the bubble, and it contains the safest place to live in 2099, the Inhuman city of Adelan. Unfortunately, some thieves have decided to steal the mists that give the Inhumans their powers, though they're quickly interrupted by Moon Knight 2099. She beats the fuck out of them, but ends up getting knocked into the home of the Watcher, who's actually not watching much these days, as the other Watchers punished him for interfering with Earth by removing his eyes. We also finally get the reveal of how the Fantastic Four 2099 were created, as they turn out to be time clones created by Uatu in an attempt to save Earth, though he now regrets it as he's condemned them to a life on a dying planet, getting ready to put them out of their misery before Moon Knight mentions that fighting against impossible odds is what heroes are supposed to do. Uatu can't just give up on them like this. Anyways, we cut down to Earth as they've discovered Captain America frozen in ice, though they've dealt with an imposter Cap before, so there's only one way to test if he's real. Is he worthy? Yeah, he is. With the Watcher having regained his motivation and Steve Rogers being back, the heroes of 2099 are finally ready to save their planet. They don't have a very complicated plan though, all just flying straight into space directly at the barrier and launching every attack they have at it, which just ends up rebounding and killing Uatu. But apparently when Watchers die, they explode, and that's powerful enough to destroy the barrier. The explosion also launches Cap off into space faster than anyone can save him, though before he disappears, he throws Mjolnir towards the group, and it's caught, and Miguel O'Hara couldn't possibly be worthy, right? By Miguel O'Hara, though he doesn't gain any power. Later guessing it's because he's not worthy as a warrior, he's simply worthy as a man, using his business skills to help fix the world. As we start to flash even farther into the future, getting glimpses at humanity expanding beyond the stars, before we finally land in 3099, as the comic ends. Oh my god, this motherfucker. How do you get frozen alive 3 times? Bro loves his naps. Technically, it actually ends with Ghost Rider 2099 becoming the embodiment of the internet, or something like that. I haven't touched any Ghost Rider 2099 comics before, and everything he does is filled with nonsense 90s technobabble. Like, seriously, he doesn't show up at all in this entire comic until the very end when he pulls up with this shit. What am I even looking at here? And that was it for the original 2099 universe. Once the 90s ended, Marvel abandoned the first 2099 and started making a bunch of alternate versions. Our first new universe in Black Panther 2099, #1. We kick it off in Wakanda, where T'Challa and the royal family are long dead and have been replaced by a council of leaders. Though that leadership doesn't last very long, as Dr. Doom suddenly attacks, only taking him 6 weeks to gain complete control over Wakanda. Though technically this isn't the Doom you know, as we get a brief flashback showing his student killing him and taking the armor, as there can only be one Doom. Anyways, one of the council, Shamba, manages to escape and helps start a revolution, fighting back against Doom's forces, eventually proving himself to be so strong that the elders trust him with the mantle of Black Panther, taking back Wakanda in 5 weeks, one less than it took Doom, though the comic ends by hinting at the fact that Doom might have a bit of magical control over Shamba. Our next comic only gives us half a character, first appearing in Marvel Team-Up #18. The time-traveling supervillain Cronok has killed nearly every hero on Earth. The only ones left are the ones that were obscure enough he just straight up didn't know they existed, including Darkhawk, Speedball, X-23, Gravity, Terror Inc., Dagger, and most importantly, Sleepwalker. They've traveled to the year 2099 to find Cronok, and they've teamed up with Reed Richards' brain inside the thing's body. They eventually manage to take him down after a long battle, until he tries to escape using his time machine. So Darkhawk breaks it while he's halfway through it, chopping him in half. They all start getting ready to head home, until Reed mentions that they killed a version of Cronok from before he killed all the heroes. So they never had the time travel in the first place, so now there's another version of them living in the modern day, and these versions villains are stuck in 2099, meaning we have our Dagger 2099. The comic ending with Speedball being disappointed that the losers finally saved the world, yet no one will ever know. Darkhawk responding, the fact we did it anyways, that's what makes us heroes. And fun fact, Dagger 2099 does show up again in another comic, specifically the one where Doctor Doom just lets Squirrel Girl invade Latveria and steal one of his time machines, because he has a phobia of her squirrels. We have by far the strangest 2099 character next, because this is Marvel Apes number 4. Yeah, there's a Marvel universe where every character's a monkey. It wasn't even like some obscure universe they barely touched either. It had its own major crossover event with the Marvel Zombies universe. Anyways, this comic is split up into a bunch of different stories, each one being told by the Watcher. But we'll find our character in the Fantastic Four 2099, a team which includes Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, Nick Fury, and Jean Grey 2099. An ape Galactus is heading towards Earth, though she doesn't want to eat the planet, she just wants to eat Jean Grey. So Ghost Rider teleports Jean to Hades 2099, and they start talking about their love life for some reason, while the rest of the team yells at Grey Lactus to go away. Her announcing she's gonna do something we'll need to see to believe, though we don't actually get to see it, as the comic ends by cutting to the Watcher, who's now being watched by a Watcher. And theoretically, since I read this comic, that makes me the Watcher. And since you're watching this video, that makes you the Watcher. And if there's anyone in the room with you, please let them know they qualify as a Watcher. Okay, enough watching. It's time for Uncanny X-Men Annual number 1. The mutant Eva Bell has lost control of her time-warping powers, accidentally ending up in the Old West, where everyone starts freaking out because her hair is dyed. Luckily for her, there's one guy who doesn't care. Jonathan Clay, aka the Rawhide Kid, a Marvel character from before the superhero era, back when they made like Western and horror comics. He's actually already dealt with time travelers, as the Avengers showed up a year prior. Well, it was a year for him. In reality, it was 40 years before. He asks how her powers work, and she explains that they only seem to activate when she's stressed out. So he decides to put her out of her misery, putting a revolver to her forehead and cocking it back, which activates her abilities and launches her into the year 2099. Luckily, right in front of the X-Men, who bring her to their leader, Magic, the current Sorcerer Supreme of the galaxy, who's become so powerful, she simply can't die of old age. Eva asks Magic to train her, which she accepts, and we flash forward to 7 years later, as she's gotten married and had a kid. Unfortunately, Magic shows up and says, hey, it's been great having you crash at my place, but like, when are you getting back to your timeline? Which pisses Eva off, cause like, child and husband. Though they don't get to talk about it for long, as the sanctum explodes, and a giant blue creature appears, fatally wounding Magic. Her dying words begging Eva to go back in time, and make sure Beast goes to prison for some reason. Turns out, those years of training didn't pay off, as the stress of the situation immediately sends Eva through time, landing right in front of a Triceratops as the comic ends. We've got a comic next that returning viewers might remember, The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl number 5. A bunch of people are being held hostage in the Statue of Liberty, all discussing who might save them, eventually deciding on Squirrel Girl, each giving a story on who she really is. Like apparently, she's been Captain America's wartime sidekick, who was replaced by a fish person. She also found a symbiote during Secret Wars. But the final story is what matters to us, as Doombots are beginning to take over the Earth, so Nick Fury activates the Tippy Toe Protocol, recruiting Squirrel Girls from across the timeline, including a pirate and a MODOK, but also Squirrel Girl 2099, though the story is quickly interrupted by the real Squirrel Girl appearing, having defeated the dinosaurs holding the people hostage. Fun fact, Squirrel Girl was actually one of the very first 2099 characters they planned. She was supposed to pull a Captain America and ended up waking up in 2099, but they scrapped the idea. It's 2015, so about time for the Marvel Universe to implode on itself and be reassembled into Battle World, getting 3 new characters in Secret Wars 2099 number 1. We immediately start off with the Avengers 2099, the team including Hercules, Captain America 2099, Iron Man 2099, and Hawkeye 2099, who really leaned into the Hawk part. They're trying to stop some thieves, but Hawkeye, even with wings, can always be countered by a gun. Though luckily, Black Widow 2099 shows up to save them, before they eventually win the fight. Hercules celebrating by harassing a random bystander. Cap clocks him in the face, so he leaves, and we find out it's the anniversary of his wife and children's deaths, and that he killed them while under mind control. So he's gotten incredibly drunk to deal with it. The comic ends with Iron Man speaking to Vision 2099, who warns him that some new enemies are coming, the Defenders. Alright, Secret Wars is over, but we get to stay in 2099 for Deadpool number 19. Wade has had 2 daughters, one who seems to love and cherish him, while the other wants him dead. They end up in a big fight over who gets to use the Deadpool name, until Warda, the evil daughter, reveals she's hidden a monster underneath a concert, and will release it if Deadpool doesn't deliver her mother's casket. The good daughter, Ellie, runs away to find Wade, though he doesn't want to give in to Warda's demands, instead going to an old ally for help, the immortal Iron Fist, aka Danny Rand, who's truly lived up to the immortal part of the name. Jumping ahead to the 2020s, we actually get the start of a new recurring 2099 universe. Every comic from this point on is in the same timeline, the first being Spider-Man 2099 Exodus number 1. A celestial corpse has crashed into Earth, and Spider-Man 2099 is trying to reach it before Norman Osborn and his organization, the Cabal, is able to. Miguel sends one of his allies, the Winter Soldier 2099, the last surviving member of the Winter Soldier program, to interrogate one of the Cabal's leaders, though he tries to bargain his way out with a broken data drive, apparently containing her lost memories. So she cracks his skull open and takes it herself, before heading off to find the garden, though she's eventually caught by Crossbones 2099, who actually is the same dude as modern day Crossbones. Kinda. I think it's more like a robot piloting his corpse. During the fight, he rips one of the Winter Soldier's arms off, though she doesn't need it to beat the fuck out of him, and then rip his arm off, which turns out to be Bucky's arm that Crossbones had stolen after killing Bucky. The Winter Soldier reclaims it for her lost friend before finally arriving in the Celestial Garden, where the waters magically repair her data drive, the comic ending with her regaining her memories. Later that year, we get the Savage Avengers number 6, a team which includes Agent Anti-Venom, the Black Knight, Cloak and Dagger, Elektra Daredevil, a Wolverine Hulk hybrid, and Miles Morales Deathlock, are trapped in 2099 being hunted by Punisher 2099, as he doesn't trust Deathlocks. The team manages to escape, hiding inside the ruins of the Avengers mansion, but suddenly a bunch of other Deathlocks show up to kill them, which is enough to convince Punisher that maybe they aren't the bad guys, helping them fight the cyborg army using the gear left over in the mansion, like Archangel's metal wings, Doc Ock's arms, and even the Spider-Mobile. They kill most of the Deathlocks, with their dying words being "Hail Deathlock Prime." Miles asking Punisher who that is, and him responding, "Everyone knows Ultron." The newest character appears in Spider-Man 2099 Dark Genesis number 2. Carnage 2099 is going on a rampage, so Spider-Man 2099 has recruited some allies to fight back, including Ghost Rider 2099, Spider-Woman 2099, and Blade 2099, the son of the original Blade. We cut to Carnage though, as he breaks into Alchemax searching for his own allies, cutting through a scientist named Boone, which might be a recognizable name if you've been paying attention, as he was Loki 2099, reconstructing his body and deciding he's sick of being a false god, he's sick of being a scientist. Now he wants to join Carnage as Halloween Jack? I don't know if that's a better name, but okay. Venom is also trying to hunt down Carnage, though they're caught by some cops and need to be saved by Moon Knight 2099 as the comic ends. We've reached the final 2 characters of this video, so for fun, here's every option left. Can you guess who we'll get? They first appear in Annihilation 2099 number 1. The exoparasites have wiped out the entire Nova Corps. Well, except one that just refused to die. And despite being the last one, he's still trying to live up to the Nova Code, protecting the innocent of the galaxy, which gets a little difficult when the Null set shows up, a group of mercenaries who stumbled upon a symbiote meteorite, the parasites instructing them to kill as many people as possible to pay the king's tithings. They get into a huge fight, with both sides getting in massive blows that would kill a normal person, though the Null set clearly has the upper hand, until a familiar snick snick sound echoes across town, and it's revealed the final Nova is Wolverine, who decided to go off into space once all his friends died on Earth. He incinerates the symbiotes with his Nova powers and flies off into space, as the comic ends by cutting to Dracula being revived, biting everyone on board his ship and then crashing it into a planet. And our last comic of the video is actually the next comic, Annihilation 2099 number 2. The planet Okastra 1's sun has gotten angry and decided to blow them up, though we cut to their twin planet Okastra 2, who all start desperately praying for their lives, which kinda works, as Star-Lord 2099 shows up on Okastra 3 after Okastra 2 blows up. She lives up to her name by attempting to talk to their star, who has a physical form calling himself Quasar 2099. Unfortunately, he's not very receptive, viewing the worlds below him as his toys to smash as he pleases. They get into a fight for a bit until Star-Lord's AI scans the sun and notices there's some weird device at the core, so she drives her ship straight into it, which she's able to survive as all her tech comes from the planet Wakanda, and is therefore therefore coated in vibranium, and the writers can make it do whatever they feel like. The device doesn't survive, however, and the sun is reverted back to normal. The comic ends with Star-Lord setting a course to the planet Dracula is stranded on.